it turns out that the information being fed to the Americans is very pro-China, very anti-America or anti-democracy, anti-free society. So it's a propaganda tool, and it's a very powerful one at that. It's become a surveillance-based internet that scrapes our data, aggregates it, and then these black box algorithms get applied to it, and we get manipulated, right? We get taken advantage of, and it's very un-American to me. And we said, wow, what an opportunity to buy this platform and move 170 million Americans over to a healthier internet, an upgraded version where they own themselves. We want to turn this TikTok problem into a solution, not just for US TikTok, but for the internet itself and how it operates.
First of all, this is my voice. I'm Tim Green and I have ALS. This podcast is not about ALS or living with disabilities. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I am a father of 5 with a marriage that's lasted for over 33 years. I am a #1 New York Times best-selling author of 41 books, an NFL first-round pick with an 8-year career. I worked on TV for Fox Sports, Good Morning America, Court TV, and Extra. I've hosted BattleBots, A Current Affair, and Find My Family. And I am also a practicing attorney. In this podcast, we're diving into real-life stories. From triumphs to trials, we'll explore the extraordinary in the ordinary. Join me, Tim Green, and my son Troy each week for real conversations, laughter, and insights. Because life is a journey, and everyone's got a story. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Frank McCourt, you are known as a billionaire businessman who recently owned and sold the Los Angeles Dodgers. You're proud of your Irish-American heritage, your Boston roots, and a family construction business that has spanned 3 generations. Recently, you founded Project Liberty and have formed a group of investors to buy TikTok. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
You're welcome, Tim. It's my pleasure to be here with you and your son, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Before we get into your story, please give us the latest on your attempted purchase of TikTok.
Yeah, the things are moving kind of quickly, and I can tell you it's fun. I'm really enjoying this process because I think we're onto something. ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, has been fighting the legislation that came out of the U.S. Congress to force a shutdown or sale. But I think that legal process is coming to a conclusion here, and the government's position will be upheld. ByteDance will have to either shut this app down or sell it, and we believe at the end of the day they're going to sell it. But they're not going to sell it with the algorithm, the Chinese algorithm, or the so-called IP. So, yeah, we have a solution, to buy it without the algorithm, which I think opens the door for a transaction. And so I'm really hopeful here that we can keep this app, alive, and do it in a way where everybody wins. Right? The Chinese government is happy because they're not selling the IP. President-elect Trump has said he wants to keep it going, and he doesn't want to see it banned. The users definitely don't want to see it banned, and we want to, make them happy. Shareholders, make them happy by getting some value for this, and of course, very importantly, protect America and American citizens in the process. So we're hopeful here, and there's no guarantees that we'll be successful, but we're working really hard on it, and I think we're front runners for a reason, because we don't need that algorithm.
Frank, for a little bit of background for the listeners who might not know, can you give I know it's probably a lot longer than 30 seconds, but can you give the 30-second version of why the government has stepped in with TikTok?
Yeah, because the TikTok is owned by a Chinese company. The control share of that company is Chinese Communist Party, right? It's the Chinese government, and TikTok surveils 170 million American, has all their data, everything. So it's micro-profiled them, and the fact that the Chinese government has the data on 170 million Americans is bad. But even worse, it has a tool to feed information to those 170 million Americans that may or may not be accurate. And it turns out that the information being fed to the Americans is very pro-China, very anti-America or anti-democracy, anti-free society. So it's a propaganda tool, and it's a very powerful one at that.
And the AI or the algorithm, that we have in the United States, you hear all these stories I read and read about that it's drastically different from the one in China. Like the one in China, every fifth or eighth video, something like that, is either educational or encouraging people to be active. Whereas in the US, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, it's right, Troy. I say to people that, that US TikTok is banned in China. It's not allowed. And the comparable app, that ByteDance has created for Chinese, children, it feeds them vitamins. What it feeds our kids is crack. And it's just that should tell you everything you need to know.
Is the future TikTok, you guys get approved, you own it, the new algorithm, the new IP that you're bringing in, is that going to be the current IP that American consumers, the crack that the American consumers are used to, or are you going to go try and make it a healthier, or maybe somewhere in between?
No, definitely healthier and better and upgraded. And the whole point of just to give you a little background, Troy, Project Liberty, we started it 5 years ago. We've been building a clean tech stack for 5 years, and quite frankly, we wouldn't be in a position to bid for TikTok if we hadn't had 5 years of work under our belt. And we don't believe fundamentally, and this is the point of Project Liberty, that our internet should operate the way it does. It's become a surveillance-based internet that scrapes our data, aggregates it, and then these black box algorithms get applied to it, and we get manipulated, right? We get taken advantage of, and it's very un-American to me. And we want to see an internet where individuals own and control their identity and their data and their relationships. In the day and age we're living, our data is our virtual being, right? It's not just this abstract thing called data. It's us in the digital world. And you and I think we want to own ourselves, right? We shouldn't be owned by any platform. So Project Liberty is reimagining how the internet works, so individuals have agency and control and the power, not the platforms. TikTok, the legislation passed in April, and we said, wow, what an opportunity to buy this platform and move 170 million Americans over to a healthier internet, an upgraded version where they own themselves. Where each of us own our data, permission its use, and can get value for it. So this is, if someone offered me TikTok and said, but you have to replicate the way it works now, I wouldn't be interested, quite frankly. This is about really taking a problem and turning it into a solution for all of us. And TikTok, I think, is a problem that can be turned into a solution that can really, really catalyze an alternative version of the internet that is better for children, better for all of us, better for society, and certainly better for democracy.
Yeah, I think from a human standpoint, and like my own kids, I would never let them on the current TikTok. So the thought of having, I think your thought of what TikTok could be is extremely exciting on a human level. I think it's a no-brainer. Like, I think it's amazing, bravo, thrilled about it. If you take off the kind of Save America hat and put on the hat of just the pure, Frank McCourt, the investor, are you worried about you change the algorithm and you lose, it goes from 170 to whatever, 90 million, right? Or 85 million, or, because the price that I saw, again, you don't know what you see on the internet, what's real, but I saw the bid was $20 billion. So obviously it's a pretty heavy bet for you and Project Liberty and all of those involved.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and these transitions, migrating a user base from one place to another is not the easiest thing in the world, right? I mean, and there is the risk you described. So what we've done to mitigate that risk is twofold. One is we would structure the bid in a way that the payments were staged based on a successful migration of the user base, so that it's not like we pay all the money up front and then only half the people migrate, or we don't get the cooperation of ByteDance. So we need to structure it in a way that we can measure the progress and everybody is incentivized to work together. Secondly, and probably more importantly, we call this the people's bid for a reason. We want the user base of TikTok, those 170 million users, to own a piece of the platform. And, just like the fans own the Green Bay Packers, we want the user base of TikTok to own a piece of this platform and enjoy the growth of the platform, kind of co-building it with us, and really benefit from the value that we see in the future, because we think that the platform can become very valuable if done correctly, and the owners are gonna make a lot of money. And we'd like to see the ownership group include the user base of TikTok. So therefore the people's bid.
And so that's kind of rolls into my next question about this is, if the monetization right now of the current internet model, which I agree with you is totally broken, of basically just mining our data without our consent, with our consents in a 1,000 page form, exactly. You just click a box to move on.
Yeah.
But basically without our consent, and you really don't have another option. So that's how they're monetizing it. That's how these social media and tech company giants are able to make the profits they are. So how can you come in with Project Liberty and not do that? How do you monetize TikTok to make good, again, just from a pure investment standpoint? How do you make good on your 20 billion?
Yeah, really, a really important question. And by the way, embedded in your question was an important phrase where you said no other options, right? We have only one choice right now, and it's to be on the internet as it currently operates. And it's not like the internet is a nice to have anymore. It's a need to have, right? We all need it. We depend on it, and it's pretty toxic, and it's pretty it's harmful. Yet until there's an alternative, none of us are going to stop using it, right? Because we need to. So our view is that we need to have an alternative so that people can migrate to a better place. It's the same thing. It's the same way, my forebears left Ireland because they were starving to death, and it was really bad there at the time. But they had a place to go, which was called America, and came for that better prospect, that better future. You need a place to go, and until we create that place to go, we're all kind of stuck with the internet we have. Now, on your question about how do you make it sustainable and economically viable, we believe that there will be advertising and there will be commerce. I don't think any of us are giving up, our ability to go on the internet and order something and have it delivered to our home the next day, right? So,
sure.
But it doesn't have to be advertising that is a derivative of surveilling us, scraping our data, and then targeting us with ads, or listening in on our conversations and pushing things on us. Why not have an internet where we signal our interest in something? We're not targeted. We just go on the internet and say, you want to buy a sweater, a shirt, a watch, a car, and then you're in charge, and you decide who to transact with and how to get value for your data. So we see we live with an attention, the so-called attention economy, where the algorithms are designed to keep us online and addict us.
Mm-hmm.
Why not an intention economy where we all just are very direct about what we want to buy, what good or service, and we survey the landscape and then make our choice? Isn't that much more valuable to advertisers to know, Troy, you're a person and you're interested in buying something, rather than me inferring that you, first of all, I'm not even sure you're a person on the current internet, and then I have to infer that you want something because I've made a judgment about you based on what I've learned about you online. And so then we all get attacked by these ads that we don't want. But just imagine an internet where you're not taken advantage of and just, targeted by these ads. You just go online and say, you type, I want to buy a car, I want to buy whatever. And you then get all your options and you make your choice. And if you want to share your data, by the way, for something else, somebody says, I want to share your data, do you mind? You say, well, I don't mind, but pay me for it. Cut me in on the deal. You're going to make a lot of money by using my data. So just give me a little bit of that money, right? And we all know that the data has enormous value now, right? And so particularly our personal data. So let's share the wealth with people who are creating the data.
And getting a product out there like a TikTok to Project Liberty, to this new internet, I mean, it would be such a massive get, obviously. Do you have other, I don't know if it's other websites or other apps that you are targeting with Project Liberty to try and pull over?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a 1.5 million people now using this upgraded internet I'm describing. So we have the proof of concept, and now we need scale. The 1.5 million users, and it's growing every day, are coming from a Web 2 app called social media app called MeWe. They have 20 million users, and they're migrating their user base over to this new tech stack as we speak. We announced 4 more apps either being built or migrating over to this tech stack. We announced them the week before Thanksgiving. That's all happening now, and we're getting a lot of incoming from people. The more the project becomes well known, the more people are contacting us and saying, "Hey, we'd like to explore building, on this stack, or moving our user base over to it." And I'm very hopeful. I will put it this way: I know the internet's going to change, because we're not all going to continue to put up with all the harms and all the disruption and all the chaos and being taken advantage of, quite frankly. So it's going to change. And the question in my mind is it going to change, over the next 3, 4, 5 years, or is it going to change over the next year? And that's what the TikTok bit is about, is to get this to compress time and really catalyze an upgraded internet so people do have a choice and a place to go, and do it more quickly than it's otherwise going to happen.
That's such a cool project. Dad, I know you wanted to get more into, Frank's background, his life, but thanks for jumping right into that.
In your book, you talk about your family fleeing from the potato famine in Ireland, but there was actually something even worse that they were escaping from. Can you elaborate on that?
The reason I use, kind of the American Project and Thomas Paine as the framing device in the book is, that folks like my forebears and many, many others were escaping places where they had no rights, where they really couldn't own anything, couldn't vote, they were subjects to, a king or a queen, right? And they, and this is the same as it was when this great country was founded, right? The settlers, reported to King George, and then, they decided to wow, it didn't have to be this way. And Thomas Paine wrote something, this pamphlet called Common Sense, which it got everybody thinking very, very differently. And he said, you could be a citizen if you wanted. You could choose to be one, born with the same rights as the king. And those became known as the inalienable rights, right? So, and you could, you're worth something. Every human being is born with the same set of rights and the same worth. And, and thankfully, this country chose citizenship over subjecthood. And we have this awesome democracy with all these freedoms and rights and so forth. But we also have to remember that these rights come with responsibilities, right? In order for me to have liberty and freedom and choice and agency, I have to respect the same in you. And so that's how this country came together. It was this idea of liberty and freedom and individual rights, enshrined by our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, but also a social contract where we respected those rights in one another. And that's what made us so great. My forebears on my mom's side, it was her parents, so my grandparents. On my dad's side, it was much earlier. They came here to be part of this great country and to leave a place behind where they were not respected in the same way, didn't have the same rights, didn't have the same opportunity. And look what it's meant for my family. 5 generations in, and where, my great grandfather started building roads when Henry Ford started building cars, and he was able to build a company that survived for over 130 years. That couldn't have happened for him, in Ireland at the time. And so America became the beacon for all people seeking freedom and liberty and being born with worthiness and respect and value. And sadly, we're giving up those rights by giving up all of our data, right? Where the technology is advancing, but we're regressing. And for some strange reason, just to be able to use a free app, we're giving up our citizenship, right? Because we're giving up everything about us. Our humanness is being stripped of us by these big platforms, because they're scraping the data. They're dehumanizing us and making us subjects again in this digital world. And I think the lesson of my forebears and the same for everyone. This whole country was started by immigrants and started with people leaving places where they didn't have rights to come to this awesome new place where people had rights and freedoms and liberties and responsibilities. And we see when you lose that, and we're losing that now in this digital age, how quickly the social fabric falls apart and how we regress. And so, this is why I link that my history and my family's history to today and the digital landscape we live in, and why I launched Project Liberty.
Do you think it's just part of that, Frank, is because it's not as, I guess, in your face? Like when your forebears were in Ireland, like it's so obvious that they were treated like subjects, entitled that way, and had the rights that way. Whereas now, like when you log into Facebook or TikTok or whatever it might be, you just click a button and move on, and it's almost like ignorance is bliss, right? People know that their data is getting scraped, but it's not like in their face. I don't know I don't know if I'm phrasing it the right way, but do you think people are just accepting it and just kind of pretending it's not there? Or do you think people aren't fully aware of what's happening?
It's like this old story of the frog boiling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The water just keeps getting hotter and hotter, and the frog would have never gone into that boiling water, but because it was just raised 1 degree at a time, the frog is boiling to death, just doesn't know it, right? Because it's happening slowly and incrementally. I think that's what's happened here. The internet, Troy, was invented by brilliant people who were creating a decentralized system for us to share information, to get smarter, advance civilization. It's become something very centralized, operating on this attention, optimizing for attention that we talked about just earlier, and what algorithms and that optimize for attention are not necessarily optimizing for what's good for people, what's good for society. And we all know that extreme things capture people's attention, right? If you're driving on a highway and there's you hit all this traffic and you realize there's an accident up ahead, we all inch by the accident, and we know we shouldn't look, but we look, right? Human nature. So the internet now is designed to get us to look and at extreme stuff. But the reality is, we're all better off. I mean, we wouldn't choose to have accidents lining the street, right, and lining the highway. We're happier without the accidents, and the traffic flows more freely, and we're not distracted. But human beings, these algorithms can cause us to be very distracted, very addicted, and very, if the goal is keep you there, keep you stuck, keep you online. So in answer to your question, I think it started off without us kind of knowing, and we all kind of just thought the internet was cool, right? I mean, it was great. We could do stuff with it, connect with people that we hadn't connected with for a long time, share photos of our kids or our friends or, our mom and dad and so forth. And it became something very different. And it happened slowly at first, and then faster and faster and faster. So now I think we know we're boiling. Now we know it's harmful. Now we're looking to get out of that hot water, right, into a better place, like we're talking about now. Now we need a place to go, because what started out like, this is fun, this is interesting, I can connect with millions of people and launch businesses and do this and that, has now become a very different animal, and it's harming us. It's undermining democracy. It's contaminating the information ecosystem. It's hard to have civil discourse, if because of the political disagreements and the polarization, and sadly, it's really harming young children in a very real way. I mean, and yeah, it's time to fix this. If I showed up as the Postmaster General and said to you, "Hey, I have an idea for you guys. I'm going to deliver your mail for free," and and you might say, "Well, okay, that's good. What's the deal?" Well, I'm going to put a camera and a listening device in every room of your house and in your car and in your workplace, and surveil you 24/7. You might say, "Well, that's creepy," and you'd say, "Well, yeah, but it's free. No more stamps." And then I'd say, "Well, one other thing, I'm going to open your mail and I'm going to read it, and everything I read is now mine, right? And not just your relationships, but your ideas and your emotions, everything is now." You say, "Come on, it's super creepy and very unfair." And I'd say, "Oh yeah, one other thing, I'm going to read your 14-year-old, daughter or granddaughter or sister's diary. And when I learned she's a little bit, she's concerned about her weight or something, I'm going to send her stuff to make her feel worse. And then I'm going to send her stuff to profit after having her made feeling worse. And then I'm going to send her stuff to show her how to harm herself, cut herself, hurt herself, right? You'd say, you're out of your mind. I mean, it's creepy. It's not fair. And it's downright harmful. And sadly, that's the internet we have today, right? And we need to change that.
Yeah, it's painfully, when you use an example like that, it's so painfully obvious. I think it's back to right where we started. It's lack of alternative. But now, that's kind of what you're solving, right? And it's people, if you think about it like that, if someone had that literal example, of course they would say no. But it's almost like the ignorance is bliss of just, well, everyone uses it and everyone's got it and it is going to take, I think that example you just did, that could be its own PR campaign for getting people to Project Liberty.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I think you're spot on. It's until we have an alternative, all we're going to do is complain about this and more and more, by the way, but, with an alternative, I think we can fix this problem very fast. And that's what Project Liberty is all about. It's about putting the solution forward, not just moaning and groaning. And I'm reminded of my, growing up in Boston as one of 7 kids. And, we'd sit at my mom and dad's dining room table and have dinner. I mean, picture it, right? You have 9 of us minimum. And usually there were friends and people stopping in and guests. And so you have a dozen people. It's like a board meeting. You know what I mean? Every dinner. And it's an unruly board meeting, I might add. And we would, as kids, we do what kids do. We complain about things, and we were actually pretty good about identifying problems, and complaining. And not a dinner would finish without my mom saying, "Hey, kids, you've done an amazing job of defining the problem. Now, what are you going to do about it?" And Project Liberty is kind of a tribute to my mom and my dad and all moms and dads, right? That because we all have similar stories. It might not be a parent, it might be a coach, a teacher, a friend, or all of the above if we're lucky, right? If we're lucky, we have lots of teachers in our life and great parents and great coaches and teachers and mentors but we all have that story where somebody encourages you to go stop complaining, go do something about it, right? And I think most people, given the opportunity and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, will step in and do something about it. It's when you're helpless and or feel helpless because you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel that people start throwing up their hands and get kind of stuck in recycle around the problem. And that's
I got to tell you about our board meetings we have. So my dad is my neighbor. My older brothers, there's 5. My parents have 5 kids. So I'm their neighbor. My older brother's on the same street. My older sister's across the street. And then I have a brother who's much younger, he's actually in his last year of high school. So 4 out of the 5 kids live within a, I don't know, 5-minute walk would be probably pushing it. And then there's 10 grandchildren in that 5-minute walk. And there's an 11th grandchild coming from, the one that got the furthest away is a few hour drive. And so the board meetings is such a funny example because we start out at the table and the table is full. Then the first 2 grandkids were there and we're like, oh, this still works and it's cute. Then there were 5 grandkids and it's like, okay, we're starting to fill up. Then there's 10, we moved to another room. Now that room's full. And I just said to my dad, I think literally this week, I'm like, this is not cute anymore. This is a circus. There's kids. There's kids everywhere.
Well, you know what? You've just hit the nerve of what makes the country work and makes the America work. And it's all about family. It's all about, and When you were telling that story, I could see the smile on your dad's face, right? And then he started to laugh because it's something we none of us would ever give up, right? Is that circus, because it's who we are, and we're lucky to have it. I have 8 children, so
wow.
Yeah, exactly. It's wow. It's right. And it's awesome. And it's not always easy, but it's always awesome. And we all benefit from, like I said, the lessons, right, of our mom and dad, the lessons of our teachers, the lessons of our coaches, the lessons of, I don't know, neighbors, right, that that grabbed you and told you a story, or gave you a tip, or helped you solve a problem. People, we need each other, and actually we want to help each other. There's nothing that makes one feel better than helping someone else, right? And when they need you, and we all know, we can name the people that helped us when we needed when we needed them, and that's completely missing on the internet we have today, right? It's not about that idea of positivity and empowering people and helping people. It's there's little bits of that on the internet, but there's a lot of exploitation on the internet right now. There's a lot of taking advantage of people, and I think it, like you said, until we have an alternative, nothing's going to change. And the second thing is, I think the alternative has to start with answering the question, whose data is it? Whose personal information is it? And for me, it is so obvious that the data that we create, it's our data. Nobody questions whether our health data is ours, right? Our health data is ours, and we have laws that protect it. But all of our data should be ours. All of our ideas should be ours. All of our emotions should belong to us. That's what makes us human beings. And we're being, kind of dehumanized by this internet in a quite literal way. Jack Dorsey, who he founded Twitter.
Yep.
Yeah, he said something in Oslo in June that I found fascinating, and I've repeated it many times. He was being interviewed, and there's a lot of talk about free speech now, right? And of course, free speech is an important component of our of democratic life and our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and so forth. There are other rights as well, so it's not only that, but it's an important right. But he said he felt we were talking too much about the loss of free speech and too little about the loss of free will. And I thought that was a very fascinating statement, because what he's saying is these platforms are designed to learn everything about us, extract everything about us, and then manipulate us. And growing up, I learned that free will was the one thing that separated human beings from all the other animal species. We had the ability to choose. We had the ability to discern, to make those choices that defined our lives. We're losing that capacity with how these platforms work. And ironically, the TikTok legislation to ban that platform or force its sale to non-Chinese owners, to American owners, is why the platform manipulates 170 million Americans. It's the same technology that the other platforms use to manipulate us. And it's just time it stops. And again, I'd rather spend time talking about the solution rather than the problem, and I'd rather spend time on fixing it than pointing blame right now, because plenty of others can deal with the blame, and plenty of others can deal with continuing to amplify the harms. I think we need to build a movement of people interested in fixing this and making life better for all those kids that keep joining your dinner table, right? I mean, this is what this is about. This is about the future. And we need, the kids you're talking about and I'm talking about to feel positive about this country, to feel like there's a future that's hopeful and promising, and it's theirs. It's theirs to make what they, what they will make what they can of themselves and their family and their business and so forth, and not that they're, that it's falling apart on them. And like, why bother? That's a bad thing when people get into that, why should I bother? I can't do anything about it mode, right? And we need to let everyone know that, no, you need to bother. You need to care. Problems are in search of solutions. And challenges are opportunities. And we want to turn this TikTok problem into a solution, not just for US TikTok, but for the internet itself and how it operates.
I take notes during podcast episodes of things. I'm like, oh, I got to remember this. Your mom's line of, you did a great job of, pointing out the problem. Now what's the solution? I'm going to use that one. I'm stealing that.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. She lived till 102, and, a beautiful life. And she was just so great. I said to her once, I think she was about, she was in her 90s, and I don't know. I was going through some bunch of stuff, and it was challenging, and I said to her, "So, Mom, how do you do it? How do you do it?" Because she's so serene and positive and happy, She said, "Frankie, it's simple. 2 words: acceptance, gratitude." And it was like she had, you read books on philosophy, right? And I can't even answer a question in under 5 minutes. And she's like giving a life philosophy in 2 words: acceptance and gratitude. And concepts are so powerful, right? To just and it's a if the country had a Secretary of Wisdom, she would have been the best candidate, and I'm sure your mom's the same way.
My dad's laughing because my mom is completely nuts in a good way. She's an angel, but she is insane.
Yeah. Well, I love to see you guys laughing at your dad laughing. I'll tell you one other story, Tim, about my. I want your dad to hear this about my mom. She went online at 95 years old. This is the good part of the internet, right? I think it's the good part. You'll judge after you hear the story. She went online at 95 years old to renew her license for 5 years, driver's license. And she, just navigated the internet, answered the questions. She had never had even a parking ticket in her whole life, right? Never mind a moving violation. So, she was, there was no flags when she went on to renew, other than the fact that she was 95, but there were no flags otherwise. And she renewed her license, and it showed up in the mail. She was good to go for until she was 100 driving. And then when she was about, 97 or something, she stopped driving. And I remember my wife, Monica, asking her, why'd you stop? And she said, you know what? I stopped because if I got into an accident, I know I'd get blamed whether it was me or not because of my age. So I figured I'd quit while I was ahead.
It's 95 to 100 still driving is, yeah.
But renewing your own license online, it was kind of like, I don't know, maybe somebody should have had a live conversation and say, are you sure? But it was
some
funny.
kind of flag.
Yeah, she's kind of a super independent woman.
Your family construction business started out with them building roads in the U.S. Can you please tell us about that? Did they have any formal training or experience building roads back in Ireland?
Wow. You know what? No one has ever asked me that question before. Amazing. In all the interviews and conversations and so forth. So I'll tell you a story that I tell a lot. It's really, well, you'll see what I'm about to say. When my great grandfather came to America, he came because he heard the streets of America were paved in gold. And when he got here, he discovered three things. Number one, the streets in America were not paved in gold, or at least the ones in Boston, where he arrived, were not paved in gold. Number two, the streets weren't paved at all. And number three, he was brought here to do the hard labor to pave them. So it was it's a story of the immigrants that came to this country and built it, right? Rolled up their sleeves and built this. And so that story is it's a joke, but we have an award that we give out every year in our company that's a cobblestone covered in gold to bring that sentiment forward, that it's all built by, one cobblestone at a time, literally in the case of my family. And that idea of the streets of America are paved in gold, that expression we all have heard, which is, a metaphor. So I don't know what my great grandparents knew about building roads. There really weren't many roads that existed, right? They were really more, I don't know, paths, right? That carts would roll along, carriages drawn by horses and this and that. Because when my great grandfather started building roads, Henry Ford was just building cars, right? Starting to build cars at scale. So he left what was called the Boston Gas Company at the time, a utility company where he started as a laborer and became a foreman and had a good union job, and decided for whatever reason he had a vision and an idea and the courage, I think, to go start a business. And he saw what was happening with the emergence of the automobile and transportation, and knew there would have to be, the roads for these cars to travel on. So I think he learned on the job and just knew that, you could figure it out. Now, over time, we became, somewhat expert in it. But I think you have to take the first step, and he did. And I find a lot of inspiration in that. And it's sometimes one step at a time. So I don't think that he started as an expert. I think he started as an entrepreneur and as someone that believed in himself and other people, and that they could figure it out. And reminds me of my first company, which was a trash collection company when I was 13, and I didn't know anything about collecting trash, but created a great little company with my next door neighbor who was 16 and could drive. And we borrowed his father's truck, and we picked up the rubbish on the lake we lived on in the summer. We had 100 houses. You had to take your own trash to the dump, and we figured, hey, we'll charge 50 cents a barrel, and make it easy for people. They wouldn't have to go to the dump. We'd take their trash. So we put up big sides on the truck, big 4x8 panels painted with a guy in a tuxedo and a carriage and horses, and the trash going in the back. And our motto was selected garbage from families of distinction. And we drove around the lake picking up barrels twice a week. It was awesome business. If someone had 2 barrels, that's $1. They gave us $1 tip. If they had a party, they had 4 or 5 barrels, they'd give us $5. And we had 3/4 of the lake as customers, and do the math, 2 kids twice a week. And then they'd ask us to do odd jobs, which was what was the funny part, and triggered by your question about, did my great grandfather know how to build roads? People would say to us, hey, you guys know how to paint? We'd say, sure, we know how to paint, but we had to learn how to paint. And they'd say, do you know how to do some carpentry? Sure, we're carpenters. One time they asked us, do you know how to tear down a building? We said, sure, we can tear it down. So I think it's about confidence and obviously never deceiving anyone, but I think it is also a leap of faith. And obviously the people that hire you are not going to they have to believe in you too, right? So you've got to prove that you have the work ethic and you care about it. But what a great question. Did they actually know how to build roads when they started? I don't know.
What made your family expand its business interests into parking garages and waterfront development?
Yeah, so the company grew over the years, and in the 70s, I split off to start the real estate company, and one of my younger brothers split off to start our telecommunications company, and my older brother Richard continued to run the construction company. And his 3 sons now, my nephews, run the construction company today. And in the late 70s, actually not too long after I started the company, I spotted an opportunity in on the waterfront in Boston to buy up a bunch of property that nobody else really wanted, which is, I think, why I was able to buy it at a young age. And it was former rail yards, Penn Central rail yards, and Penn Central had gone bankrupt and they were liquidating assets. And so we bought the property, and it was a mess, and cleaned it up. And, we were able to grow it and park about 3,000 cars a day on the property, which helped carry, pay the taxes and carry the property until it was ready for development, because it took many, many years to develop. And so the experience we've had in the parking business is usually as a way to support our real estate development, as opposed to a business of its own. You try to create revenue wherever you can to be able to carry real estate, which can be very, very expensive, particularly large parcels. But that parking helped us carry that property for years. And now, we're so proud, that we created or helped create the vision for what's now the seaport in Boston, which is a whole new area in Boston, which has really allowed the city to grow and prosper, particularly in the biotechnology area. And so a lot of our growth, Tim, has happened, kind of organically. Started with construction, moved into real estate, moved into telecom. Yes, it included parking, moved into sports, moved into media, moved into technology, and so forth over the time. And don't get me wrong. I mean, we work really, really hard, but we also consider ourselves pretty lucky. And I think of my mom's acceptance and gratitude all the time, and gratitude's is a big thing that we remind ourselves of every day.
Gratitude is something I have leaned on a lot lately. I was reading about your time at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. What did you study? I assume that you enjoyed it based on your patronage and support of the university.
Yeah, I probably enjoyed it a little too much, honestly. but it was that Jesuit education and the values that they talk about. They finally sunk in with me. It took probably a little bit longer with me than other people, but I finally got it, and I loved my time there. Georgetown is a great place, and again, how lucky was I, right, to be able to attend the university and then give back. In later on, I've had the privilege of serving on the board for many, many years. Helped start a new school there, public policy school, which I'm very proud of. And I'm still friendly with my 4 roommates. So it's it was a wonderful time. And Groucho Marx had a great line where somebody asked him about country clubs, in joining a country club, and he said, "I'd never want to be part of a country club that would let me in." And I kind of feel that way about Georgetown. I don't think I could get in there anymore. It's become such a great, such a hard place to get in. But I'm really proud of what Georgetown has become, and my family has had a relationship that's approaching 100 years with Georgetown, because my dad went there too, and started in 1935. So it's a relationship that we really treasure, and as most people do with their alma mater, of course. But something special about Georgetown, it started the same year as our country, right? 1789. That was George Washington was inaugurated a few months after Georgetown was started, coincidentally. And so Georgetown has grown up in D.C. with the country. And they'll both celebrate the 250th anniversary the same year. That's pretty amazing, actually. So, yeah, I really enjoyed my time there.
What was your major?
I majored in economics. So I chose, I kind of always knew I wanted to go into the construction business and business generally. Mm-hmm. And, my parents urged me to get, kind of a liberal arts education and just be exposed to things that I might not otherwise have been exposed to. And, I really valued that education, and so I it reminds me of a funny story. I used to, when I was at Georgetown, that was the day and age where you used to actually, write checks, right? And I'd write these checks uh, to the third edition, which was a place I worked part time. It was like a restaurant bar, very popular with Georgetown students. And I'd write checks when I needed a little cash. And, my parents would see me cashing these checks to the third edition. And, because they were their account, right? And they would give me a few checks to blank checks if I needed to do something. And they'd say, what are these checks to the third edition? And I said, oh, don't worry, it's a bookstore. And and so and I knew that I think they knew I was kidding, but anyway, they didn't press me too hard on it. And then it came down from my graduation, and my dad said to me, hey, why don't you invite your roommates and their parents and families out to dinner, and we'll take them all out to dinner and have a nice celebration, and just pick a place that you like, and that they'll enjoy. And I said, geez, Dad, thanks, that's great. And so I invited them all. We went to the place I worked because they all used to hang out there. We liked it, and so on and so forth. And so we all this beautiful dinner and celebration, and everybody's in a happy mood after the graduation. And I'm walking out with my dad, and he kind of gives me the elbow, and he said, "Hey, nice bookstore." Because I forgot that I forgot my scam, and because I took him to the place that was. Now he knew what the third edition really was. So, a glorified pub, basically. So, anyway.
That's awesome.
Like I said, I probably had a little bit too much fun at Georgetown.
You mentioned that you went to a Jesuit high school, and then Georgetown was a Jesuit college. Did you grow up in a strict Catholic family?
What you would call, I think, Irish Catholic practicing family. And, we didn't eat meat on Fridays, and I was an altar boy as a young kid, and so forth. But you know what? It was very clear to me that my parents were going to let me make my choices as I got older, and the same with my siblings. So there wasn't a lot of judgment that came with it. They were showing me a religious practice that, and both my parents were devout Catholics, and it was a big, part of their lives. My mom and dad helped build the church in my neighborhood, and really, it was an important part of their life and their practice and their belief system. And they wanted us to be exposed to it, but never once were we told, maybe when we were really young, you're going to do this, or you're going to do that. I'm not sure I would have chose to be an altar boy on my own, if you know what I mean. But when we got older, a little bit older, never once were we told what we had to do, what we had to believe. No judgment whatsoever. And, so I feel like I've benefited greatly from the Jesuit influence in high school and college. The Jesuits for me are an awesome group. They're not dogmatic. They don't proselytize or, make you do things a certain way. It's not like, memorizing the right answer. It's like thinking about these problems that exist in the world, and uh, uh, and really respecting other people and other religions, and uh, in a genuine way, embracing ideas and differences and diversity, and really, um, developing a kind of a uh, caring for the whole person, not just the um, the spiritual part, or the intellectual part, or the emotional part, or the physical part, but all of it, and really, being men and women for others, right? There's that service mentality, and um, it was kind of liberating for me, right? Because it was, the Jesuits are Catholic too, but they're not, dogmatic. They're not, you must do this, this, and this to be, to be a good person. And so over the years, I've become more spiritual, I think, and less religious. And I consider myself a cultural Catholic, but 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 not a practicing Catholic in the same way that my parents did growing up. But I'm very, very grounded because of my parents, for sure, but also the Jesuits over time, in kind of a uh, ethical, moral practices, and a spirituality, which I think is, for me, more gives me more freedom than um, a strict practice. And yeah, so it was an evolution for me in my thinking, but I think I benefited from both the early practice and then the Jesuit expansion during my formative years. And then I was on my own, right, to sort it out.
Jesuits are an order of Roman Catholic priests and brothers. And I'm wondering whether your faith has stood up under the pressures of life in a world that is increasingly more secular. The reason I ask is because I told Troy I wanted to use this podcast to help spread awareness about religion and ALS. If I can help anyone find comfort in religion the way I have, it's worth it. And if I can help anyone with ALS or help raise money for Massachusetts General Hospital's ALS team, it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's great. I mean, it's tremendous. And I think the part of what I've discovered anyway, and what the Jesuits really helped me understand, is this idea of a life of purpose, right? And I feel that my belief system has helped me navigate through the course of my life, and uh, and again, I've had this behavior modeled for me, so uh, I had that advantage. I didn't have to make this, discover this on my own, right? I was able to see parents that were practicing Catholics, and then the Jesuits and the Jesuit ethos, and then you're kind of let go to navigate the world, but having those principles, having the ethical, moral foundation, having a belief system is so incredibly valuable in navigating the world and making choices, and trying to make the right choices. The Jesuits have a word for that. It's called discernment, and that idea of trying to make the best judgment and choice, because at the end of the day, our life is made up of the collection of choices we've made. And so I think faith, means something different to different people. And for some, it's a set of practices and a discipline that helps keep them grounded. For others, it's a set of principles and kind of a belief system and a spirituality. For others, it's both. And sadly, for some, it's neither. And to me, I feel it's a very, very difficult to navigate this life without a belief system and a sense of purpose and feeling the joy of giving to others. And, Tim, the inspiration that you provide because of your beliefs is, and you could very easily turn inward, right? And struggling with what you're struggling with, and rather you've chosen to turn outward and to do something for others, and that is incredibly powerful, and that is, for me, evidence of faith, evidence of a higher power, evidence of the spirituality I'm talking about. And and I'm deeply moved by it.
Could you take us through the story of how you came to own the Los Angeles Dodgers? It started with your attempt to buy your hometown Boston Red Sox, and then things took a twist.
I grew up playing baseball. Love the sport. My grandfather was a part owner of the Boston Braves, but they, of course, left Boston the year I was born. So my whole experience in Boston was with the Red Sox, and going with my parents to the ball games, and then taking my kids. And yeah, it was. Never really thought that I'd be in a position one day to bid on the team, but the Yawkey family, after many years, the team, it was actually in a trust after Mrs. Yawkey passed away, and they sold, and there was a lot of bidders. There's an old expression about Boston that there's only three things that matter in Boston, and it's sports, politics, and revenge. And so you can imagine how sports and politics mixed, right? And when the team was being sold, particularly when it was hadn't changed hands for a long time. So we got in the mix, and we had a very unique approach because we actually owned the land that we were talking about earlier on the waterfront. And Mr. Harrington, who was the trustee and making the decision for the trust as to who to sell the team to, really wanted to build a new ballpark on the waterfront. And, it's kind of part of his legacy and setting the team up for the next 100 years and so forth. And we had the land. And so, he really was very supportive of our bid, and we ended up becoming one of the 3 finalists. And then, kind of at the 11th hour, there was a real shift, and the owner of the how would I describe this? Baseball was going to buy the Montreal Expos. The owner of the Montreal Expos was going to buy the Florida Marlins, and the owner of the Florida Marlins was going to buy the Red Sox. So it was like a 3-bank shot, and because the process was so far along, the owner of the Marlins entered into a bidding group that was not one of the 3 finalists, but suddenly became the preferred buyer because baseball had a larger plan that they had decided to put in place. By the way, the Montreal Expos are now the Washington Nationals because they moved the team eventually to Washington. So it was a process, and it ended in an unexpected way, right? And when it was over, I went to New York and Park Avenue, met with the president of the league, and I wanted just to make sure that because things were so frenetic and that I hadn't stepped on anybody's toes inadvertently in the process, and much to my surprise, they said no. We were kind of wondering if you'd be interested in buying another team. And I said, oh, wow, I hadn't been thinking about that. My goal was just to close the book here on the Red Sox journey. And I said, I'll think about it and get back to you. And, there was so it was like, wow. And I remember my mom, after the team went to John Henry and we didn't get it, I remember speaking to her on the phone, and she said, Frankie, how are you doing? Are you okay? And I said, Mom, I'm doing fine. I mean, who would have ever thought, growing up in Watertown, Massachusetts, that I'd be in a position to bid for the Red Sox and own it, right? I just was privileged. I just thought it was awesome to be involved in that process. And she said to me, remember, when one door closes, another opens. And it was amazing because I went to Major League Baseball to say, just want to close the book on the Red Sox and make sure I didn't poke anybody in the eye here, inadvertently. And they said, no, to the contrary, we're wondering if you want to buy another team. And there it was, the door closing and the door opening. And long story short, I looked at other teams. The Dodgers obviously were the, most iconic of the teams that were available. Although they were a bit of a mess, to be honest, at the time. This was 2003, 2004. They were losing a lot of money. Rupert Murdoch owned them, and they were losing $50-60 million per year, which was not something I couldn't afford to buy a team and then lose that amount of money year after year after year. So I was a bit reluctant, and I had a neighbor who was selling the team for Rupert, and he said, Frank, you should really do this. If you put your mind to it, you can really make this work. This is a great brand, and so on and so forth. And after he said that to me 3 times, I finally said to him, his name was Stan Schumann, Stan, send me the book and I'll look at it. And we studied it, and we thought, what, we could actually really turn this franchise around. But it was going to be a big decision because as a Bostonian, I'd lived my whole life there, deep roots in the community. LA is very different than Boston, obviously, but I thought it was a great adventure and would be a great eye opener for my kids and the four boys I had at the time. So, we took a run at it, and we were able to put a deal together to buy it. And in a few years, in less than 3 years, we went from being the worst performing club in Major League Baseball financially to the best. We went from being a team that hadn't won a postseason game in 16 years to a perennial. We won the first postseason game in 2004 in our first year, and then built from there, and became a perennial contender. And we renovated the stadium and had record attendance. Everything was great until sadly I got separated from my wife and divorced, and that things went in a unanticipated direction, and very sad moment and difficult moment, and decided to sell the team in order to kind of what's the expression, break the Gordian knot, you know what I mean, and move on with life and let everybody move on with life. But it was a great experience. I loved it. It was a privilege to own a Major League Baseball team, and one door closed and the other one opened.
I know it's a tough subject, but can you talk about your divorce from your first wife? Both what it was and what it wasn't. And at what point did you realize that the algorithms of big tech were working against you, and more importantly, working against the truth?
Yeah, wow, that's a very very insightful question, because when I got separated in July of 2009, and then lived for the next 2.5 years. It was very chaotic and very challenging, and because as a public figure, going through owning the Dodgers and going through a divorce in a town like LA, a city like LA, where people are kind of the product, right? I mean, it is a show business place, and a celebrity driven, and so personalities kind of drive the news and all that. It can be very uncomfortable, but something else was going on in 2009, 2010, 2011. And what had happened is, Facebook had started in 2004, but it added the like button in 2009. And everything was going mobile, and the smartphones were coming out in 2007, 2008, the phones we all use now. So you had the phone in everybody's hand. So everybody now was on social media, and social media changed from being that nice place where we shared pictures and reconnected with people and just communicated socially. It became a performance based, where the extreme behaviors got amplified by lots of people hitting that like button. Lots of, where just stuff was amplified like crazy, but it didn't have to be true stuff or validated information. It was just everybody could say whatever they wanted, right? And then retweet it, repost it, like it, follow it, and it just became this explosive medium. And in my personal situation, figuratively, I was watching my house burn down, and I had a small garden hose with low water pressure to try to put the fire out, while thousands of people got to take five-gallon cans of gasoline and pour it on the fire. Right. The point is, there were no controls or boundaries, and anybody could say whatever they wanted and amplify it, and it's almost like a mob mentality, if you know what I mean, and very unhealthy. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not complaining. I could have done things better, I'm sure, and but I saw something that I thought was leading in a very bad direction for all of us, not just obviously, me and my family. And I started really to worry about this, because feeling like, wow, if the internet continues to move in the direction it's moving, it's going to do a lot of damage to a lot of people and institutions, and even to the country, because we all kind of rely on a shared set of facts and truth and trust and certain norms and practices in order to function every day in a positive way, and continue to move the country forward, move civilization forward, move people forward. And the technology was taking us in a very different place without the guardrails. And so I learned something. I you might even call it a silver lining. I saw something, felt something, experienced something, which gave me, I had kind of a front row seat. And so after selling the Dodgers in 2012, helped start a public policy school in Washington, D.C. We talked about that earlier. And that school was founded in October of 2013. And my thinking was that if we needed to get out in front of this technology with better policies, better regulation, to actually, before this thing got totally out of control, now I'm talking about the internet technology and social media in particular, we needed to get this back on track. And, we had a massive data institute inside of the public policy school, really understood the power of the data, but we really needed to think about how would you use the data in a more purposeful way, in a way that respected human beings more, and was more respectful. And I realized a few years into this that the school is great. It's going to be one of the best public policy schools in the world, and it will educate the next generation of policy leaders. But the problem is urgent now, and policy making is a slow, deliberate process by design. Technology is fast and could care less about public policy, could care less the way it's designed about individuals or democracy or kids' safety or whatever. And I went back to my roots, and I said, we need to fix this. We need to fix this technology. We need to focus on the engineering, because if we don't fix the tech, we're not going to solve these problems, because public policy making is no match for the speed and the power and the wealth and the advocacy and the influence of technology. So we need to fix this tech. And that's what led me to Project Liberty. And then in 2000, and after a period of a couple of years of thinking about this, talking to people, experimenting, we launched Project Liberty in 2019. So that was the sequence. I think the question is a really interesting one, because little did I know at the time, and of course, when you're in the midst of a divorce and upheaval in your life and your family's life, and dealing with just the humiliation of all of it, and the pain of all of it, you're not really thinking about, well, I'm gonna address the internet in 5 years and dedicate my life to that. Or you kind of try to survive the moment, right? And then you get through it and reflect on, like, what the heck is going on here. And then and then you hear your mom's voice and you say, okay, you see a problem, what are you going to do about it? And so my first instinct was to address the policies and the regulations, but then I realized I was out of sequence. We had to address the technology first, and then the policies, because the technology was moving too fast, it was too powerful, and the policy making no match for it. And so let's address the tech. So I hope that answered your question, but I wouldn't wish what I went through in LA on anyone, because it wasn't fun, but there was a silver lining. I learned a lot during that 2.5, 3 years, that I was able to really better understand the harms of weaponized social media, and how it can really hurt people, and really harm them. And look, I had resources, and I have a network, right? A big, strong family, and friends, old and new. I had people around me helping me. I mean, what does and this was early innings of what social media has become. What does a young 13, 14, 15-year-old do when this technology has become 100 times more powerful, 1,000 times more powerful than what I described, and they're on their own, and they haven't lived a life like I had lived, and with the experiences and the network, and they're on their own, preyed upon by this technology. It's no wonder that so many young kids are anxious and depressed, and and feeling very disconnected. It's powerful technology that can really that's a huge weapon. And again, the Chinese government figured that out, and they're using it, on 170 million Americans now, and that's why our Congress moved so quickly to pass that legislation. So, look, I think the positive thing in all of this is that people are now, the light bulbs are going off. Thanks to, like, what we're doing right here, right now, talking about it, right? And you able to share this podcast with others, and I can do the same, right? And we can socialize this issue and give people hope, give people replace that helplessness with hopefulness, that if we fix this technology, we can actually fix a lot of other problems, and we can get back together again as Americans and as a society. Sure, we'll have differences. Sure, we'll disagree, but disagreeing doesn't mean you have to hate other people. And that's what's happened now. The technology has given people permission to hate and a weapon to amplify hatred. And it's very, very damaging. And, not to mention that, how does somebody know what's true and what's false anymore?
Yeah, it's crazy with AI, especially.
Anybody can put anything online, right? And it gets amplified. And the more extreme, the more it gets amplified. And people believe it. And now, like you say, Troy, the deep fakes are as good as the originals.
I cannot imagine how frustrating that must have been. What was the most egregious lie perpetrated by social media at the time?
It was death by 1,000 cuts. And it was, what I mean by that, it was creating a narrative of, here's a guy that's owns the Dodgers, and I actually never referred myself as an owner. I refer to myself as a steward, because these ball clubs, these major sports franchises are civic assets, and you steward them. You don't own them. It's not like another business which you might own. But the narrative became one of, here's the guy that owns the team, that all he's doing is, sucking the resources out of the team, and doesn't care about the fans, and doesn't care about and it just became this, drumbeat of negativity. And I tried to say, wait a second. When I bought the team, it hadn't won a postseason game in 16 years. And look at now, we're, back-to-back National League Championship Series for the first time in 35 years. Look at the stadium was falling apart, and we've refurbished it. Look at the attendance. Every year it's the top, the attendance was dropping. Now it's rising. The spring training facility was in Vero Beach, and nobody went because it was across the country. It was in Florida. Now I built a brand new one in Camelback Ranch. Look at our farm system that was nowhere, and now look what it's doing. Clayton Kershaw, et cetera, et cetera. Joe Torre is my coach. Don Mattingly is a bench coach. I mean, these are Hall of Fame. These are we're the club is, the shine is back on the club, where we're gone from being a laughing stock financially to the model franchise. None of it mattered. None of it mattered. And all that mattered was a narrative that somebody wanted to create for whatever hateful reasons, and pound away. And I didn't, I promised my boys I wasn't going to even engage publicly in the whole set of issues. They asked me to keep it private, and I agreed with them to do that. So you're kind of a sitting duck. And it turns out there are a lot of mean-spirited people out there that use social media as a way to be mean and do harm. But there's also a lot of great people out there. There's a lot of incredible people out there. But the social media platform that we have today amplifies the bad. It doesn't amplify the good, because we put this in the hands. The internet is doing something that the visionaries that created it never imagined it to do, never designed it to do. I know this because I've talked to all of them. And we let it just get away from us. The frog is boiling. And we need to pull it back in and cool down the temperature of the water, make it healthy again. And and build an internet where individuals are respected, where we're not stealing their data. Individuals are giving the app permission to use the data. The individuals are setting the terms and conditions of use, and the apps are clicking on us, our terms and conditions. We're not clicking on that 1,000-page document that none of us read. So it's, for me, it's the journey I'm on, and I believe more and more the older I get, that we all have kind of a, we may think we control things, but we don't, right? We're here for a purpose. We have whatever our mission is. We just need to, have an open heart and be aware of what's around us. Do what we can to make things better, and take adversity as a way to learn, and a way to appreciate what you have, and appreciate the hardship other people go through. And I came out of LA for sure a better person, and a more empathetic person, and a wiser person. And sometimes it takes. I wrote a poem, and one of it's called Missing Pieces, and one of the stanzas is of the poem is, the missing pieces, they are the key. They allow grace to enter and a soul to be. And so I think we all get roughed up, right? And life is full of adversity, and it doesn't. We all, it's part of life and living and being. And you can either take it and be defeated by it, or take it and do something with what you're learning. And I'm looking at a man right now who's taking something that could disable others, and be in it and be disabling, or take that and make and enable and be enabling, and that's what you're doing. And I know we're going to run out of time here shortly, but I've said it once, I'll say it again. I find it inspiring. It gives me strength and energy to do the work that I'm doing. It's powerful.
In your experience, was the mainstream media any better, if at all, than social media?
Yeah, I'll use this example with the Dodgers. When I bought the Dodgers in 2004, we had a big audience, and we could issue a press release, and we would hope that mainstream media would pick up our message and amplify it and validate it, right? So you would release a piece of information, and you'd hope it would get picked up by ESPN, and be on the banner of ESPN that runs across the screen at the time, or picked up by, national news, and amplify your message. By 2009, it was just the opposite. Mainstream media was looking at what was trending, what was being optimized by search engines. And, and in mainstream media, there's always been partisan media, and serious media, and kind of satirical media. Like growing up, I was never confused when I saw the Boston Globe or the Wall Street Journal versus the National Enquirer, right? I knew there was a difference, right? That the Boston Globe was a serious newspaper, was serious journalists, and the National Enquirer was fun, entertainment, made things up. Well, in the world we're living in now, the media is not trusted. And there's, on social media, the serious journalism is mixed up with the Martian landing with 3 heads. It's the sensationalism is mixed in with it's all a big mashup and hard for people to distinguish. So what I was saying, within 5 years, from 04 to 09, it flipped from convention. You hoped that you got what you put online on your website at the time, because it was pre-mobile, would get picked up by mainstream media. By 09, mainstream media was seeing what was trending online, what was being amplified online, what search engines were optimizing. SEO. Every group of people in media to sit down when they talked about with the editors and the headline writers and the journal, what should we put in the paper today or on the news tonight? What's trending online? What is the search engine optimizing? Well, what was trending and what was optimizing was extreme positions, and not at all necessarily accurate things or well-researched things. It's just many times just the opposite. So mainstream media has also been disabled by all this because they drank the Kool-Aid. And now, by drank the Kool-Aid, I mean they bought into all this, right, and followed it. And now we see that a lot of local media outlets have gone out of business, and that's very important, because who knows local communities better than local media, right? Otherwise, it's all just national sensational stuff, and they're struggling because the revenue has all been sucked up by this big vacuum cleaner called the internet, and the ad tech, attention-based internet we have. And so we need to figure this out in a way that actually redesigns the internet so that small outlets can actually exist. And you won't need to all the activity won't just be in a few walled gardens, but I'll think of all these apps operating together, and you'll be able to take your information and share it with each. The apps will be able to interoperate just like phone carriers, right? There was a time when, the phone carriers didn't talk. If you lived in Boston versus Miami or Boca or LA or whatever, you had to get a different phone. Well, now that seems silly in retrospect. The same thing is going to be in 5 years is going to look silly about the internet. The apps will interoperate, and our information will be portable online, just like our phone number. We take it with us, and we can change carriers anytime we want. It's all going to change. And when that happens, small apps that cover local news or very, very specific hobbies or sports or industries or whatever will have a chance to have a business model that will work, and people will use them because there'll be value there, because they'll have expertise that bigger platforms that only skim the surface of subjects won't have. I think it's going to be a great decade if we can fix this problem, and I think it's going to be a great century if we can fix it, because all this information that we create every day, when you put it together and see the patterns and see the possibilities, and but do it in a respected way, where people are permissioning its use and getting value for it and feel they have agency, they're not being screwed over and taken advantage of, I think it opens up a massive new world that is going to be amazing. And I hope we're going to be sitting back a few years from now and saying, well, that was a close call, but we fixed it just in time, and we're in a much, much better direction now. And we can build momentum around that much better direction. And you know what I mean? And the 15 kids around that table that you referred to start to see this all as, oh, wait a sec, this is our country, this is our world, this is our stuff. We're gonna fix the mess, and we're gonna make it better. And what a privilege it will be to have, personalized medicine and solutions to things, the answers to questions that we didn't have, and just to be able to live long, beautiful, healthy lives and so forth.
What was the impetus for writing your book, Our Biggest Fight? It's one of the most important books of our time. In fact, I can't think of a more important book for the preservation of our democracy.
Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you for reading it, for listening to it, and thanks for taking the time doing this. I mean, it's been a really great conversation, and you've got me thinking about some things that I hadn't even thought about before. And like I said, one question that you asked, I have never heard in all the questions that I've been asked over the years, and it's really great. And yeah, I'm happy that the book resonated with you. I want to just close by saying I don't have all the answers, but I know the answers are out there. And Project Liberty is not about getting it right. It's not about being right. It's about getting it right. And that's really important. This isn't about, one guy or company or project having, the prescription for it. It's about pointing us in a different direction, opening people's eyes to possibilities, that things don't have to be the way they are. There is a solution to this. I believe we're directionally correct. And now let's get it right, and let's bring in people.
How will you prevent the tech giants from weaponizing their algorithms against you? We had Brian Kilmeade as a guest on one of our earlier episodes of the podcast, and just the mention of President Trump affected the episode detrimentally.
I anticipate that big tech will fight. There's an old adage attributed incorrectly, apparently, to Gandhi, but it says, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. And I think we're in the third phase right now. We're in the fight. And I expect it to get more difficult. And then I expect we'll win.
I think so too. Frank, I have heard several times you identify yourself first and foremost as a father of 7 and an adoring husband to your second wife. What can you tell us that is special about each of them? Well,
first thing I can tell you is, since I made that statement, I've had another child, so I'm now the father of 8. So that's special. But you know what is special is that each of them is a beautiful human being, different from the others, and it is amazing to see these young kids grow up to be thriving adults. I feel so incredibly blessed by it. I learned from my kids, but I see in each of them completely unique personalities and traits and attributes and skills, and they're each going to offer something different, right, to the world and receive something different from it. And just that's the way all people are, individual, unique people that all have something to offer. I'll double click on my wife, Monica, however, because she is an angel. She's someone that, came into my life at a very challenging time. And she's brought so much to my life, and I've learned so much from her. She's the soul that keeps me going, and she's the one that came in and was able to, I think, heal me and encourage me and nurture me in so many ways. And it just proves the adage that, none of us can do this alone, right? And if you find someone that is your partner in life, we're very lucky when that happens. So I'm the beneficiary of all this, is the way I feel. And again, as I said before, she dropped into my life for a reason, and it was her wings. Her wings are not visible, but she has them.
Now on to our final word segment, where we ask our guests a few rapid fire questions. What was the happiest moment in your life?
Impossible to answer, because I think it's each child at when they were born.
What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
Oh, for sure, my divorce and living that out publicly in LA.
What are you most excited about?
The work I'm engaged in now with Project Liberty, and reimagining how the internet works so that we can empower it. We can change this internet from one that exploits to one that empowers individuals.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Listen more carefully to people that know more than you do.
What book recommendations do you have for us or our listeners?
I have two recommendations. Of course, I'd say read Our Biggest Fight. But I'd add to that any book that will educate your listener on how the internet really works. The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, The Teenage Brain by Francis Jensen, and so forth. But make sure you also pick up a book that makes you laugh and makes you happy, because what we're talking about is fairly heavy material, and I think it's important to also keep this joyful, because this is a fun project. And so you can really go deep in this subject, but read Our Biggest Fight and then pick up some other books that will help you get your readers get smarter on the subject as well, because it's a really important set of issues.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
Oh, are you kidding me? I've talked so much in the last couple of hours, and I'm surprised you guys are still awake.
So, Frank, at the end of every podcast, the single last question I ask everybody is, we want to get awareness out for ALS. We want to tell people's interesting stories. Who are people that you know personally that you think we should have on the podcast to tell their story?
Dan Doctoroff. Dan Doctoroff was deputy mayor of New York.
We recorded with him.
You already did?
Yeah, it hasn't come out yet, but it's recorded.
Yeah, Dan's a dear friend of mine, and he would be the one I would have recommended.
Frank McCourt, it has been a pleasure to talk with you today. Thank you for your incredibly valuable time, and may God continue to bless you and your family.
Thank you, Tim. Troy, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you both, and I wish you and your family and all those kids running around Merry Christmas and a great new year ahead.
If you enjoyed today's episode, consider supporting the podcast for free by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends. Your support means the world to us. This episode of Nothing Left Unsaid is brought to you by 11 Labs. Their groundbreaking technology makes a huge difference, and we're grateful for their support. To learn more, visit 11labs.io. A substantial portion of our sponsorship proceeds go to tackleals.com, funding cutting-edge ALS research. If you'd like to join the fight and contribute, visit tackleals.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Nothing Left Unsaid.